Stand up for righteousness. Stand up for justice. Stand up for truth.
I truly believe that thoughts are the greatest vehicle to change.
We do not care whether the cat is black or white, as long as it can catch mice.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
Victory in spite of all terror. Victory however long and hard the road may be.
To those waiting with bated breath for that favorite media catchphrase, the U-turn, I have only one thing to say. U-turn if you want to. The ladies not for turning.
When you arise in the morning, think of what a privilege it is to be alive, to breathe, to think, to enjoy, to love. Is a quote from the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius, who embodied the Platonic concept of the philosopher king, a ruler who does not seek power for his own sake, but to help his people. I thought this was a fitting quote for our guest today, someone who is a strong advocate for emerging talent, seeing people and organisations thrive through strong cultures, clear and aligned purposes and actions. Our guest is Michael Schneider, Managing Director of Bunnings Group, Australia's leading retailer of home improvement and outdoor living products, with revenues in excess of $17.75 billion. Prior to joining Bunnings in 2005, Michael had a diverse career across retail and financial services at the Warehouse Group, Westpac and Target. He's also chairman of Fight MND, Australia's leading independent motor neurone disease foundation. Love Me, Love You, a mental health charity, and sits on the boards of Melbourne United Basketball, Corporate Mental Health Alliance of Australia, and Global Home Improvement Network. Hello and welcome to another episode of No Limitations, a show where we speak to elite, world-class performing men and women and unlock the secrets and influences that have shaped their destinies and that you could apply to your own life. For our first-time listeners from all over the world, please don't forget to follow on your preferred podcast platform and share with your friends and colleagues. And for our listeners in the United Kingdom, Germany and Turkey, a big hello. I am your host, Greg Robinson, Managing Partner of Bland & Partners Executive Search and Board Advisory. In today's episode, we are treated to fascinating stories from Michael's career. From a 15-year-old casual pushing trolleys and punching checkouts, who found a passion in retailing and rose through the ranks, to being at the helm of Bunnings in a red shirt and an apron. He highlights the magic of a team, the heart and soul of a business, what's in store for retail, and the next normal for Australia's workforce. So sit back and enjoy. Leadership is a contact sport. Michael, welcome to the show.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Michael, as you know, we're renowned for asking some pretty tough questions. And I guess to put you on the back foot and get this conversation started, I'd like to know, how do you like your sausages?
Well, it's a topic of hot debate at Bunnings. I certainly like them well cooked. You never want an uncooked sausage, but we like to keep them nice and safe as well, which at Bunnings means the onions go under the sausage. But it's always been something that's been a bit of a debate. So there you go.
Sauce, no sauce?
Sauce and mustard, and the mustard has come late. You know, I think it's a bit of a sort of a tilt of the hat to the American hot dog, but there's something about that flavour combination that is pretty special, and definitely down at my local Bunnings on most Saturday and Sunday mornings, supporting local communities.
And that's what it's about, isn't it, Michael? That's the one part of the essence of Bunnings, the local community and its engagement. Firstly, what does Bunnings stand for?
Look, I think Bunnings plays a really important part in the lives of all Australians and New Zealanders, the two countries in which we operate our business today. You know, our homes are such an important part of our lives, whether we're living at home with mum or dad, or we're renting our first place, or first home buyer, or you know, sort of moving into the sort of, you know, more mature years like you and I, Greg, you know, or hopefully a bit more mature anyway. But the home does play a really important part. It's a shelter. I think the last few years we've seen it as a home classroom. It's a home office, and I think it'll be a home office for a long time. It's an enormous source of value and wealth for many Australians in New Zealand. Forms a big part of our financial asset base, and Australians certainly have a love affair with property. And it's a safe sanctuary. It's a place to bring people, and I think by extension, Bunnings does play a big role in that. We provide products and services for everything from the front gate to the back fence of your home or property, and we like to inspire people to get in, have a red hot go at doing things around their homes. For thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of our customers, we support their small businesses through our trade business as well. And then, as you touched on, we play a really important role in the community. We sort of see our stores as that third space. If home and work are the first two spaces in our lives, community facilities are a third space. And for a lot of people, Bunnings is that. We see community groups coming into our stores to do activities to raise funds. We've got dedicated team members in our stores who work locally with community groups, supporting grassroots activities, whether it's preschools and primary schools or junior sporting clubs or the Lions or Rotary. So, I think that Bunnings is that, and the snag is a synonymous part of that experience, and it raises tens of millions of dollars every year for community groups. 100% of funds raised go to the community groups, and I think at a time where it is, people are doing it pretty tough, being able to support those groups is a pretty cool thing.
Michael, I've always just sort of wondered how many people have actually come through and bought sausages. It must be in its millions. Maybe, Michael, for the benefit of the audience, could you expand on what is Bunnings? What is the scale of the operation? How many staff, locations, the growth over the last 5-10 years? And can you frame it all together for us?
Yeah, look, Bunnings is, it's Australia and New Zealand's largest home improvement outdoor living retail business. Our Bunnings, or stores under the Bunnings Warehouse brand, it's about 386 locations across Australia and New Zealand that are open to trade. We've got a number of manufacturing sites that build floor and roof trusses for people's homes and frames that go around that as well. We've got distribution centres, support centres, all of the things that you need to sort of run a retail business. We've got over 100 businesses that trade under the Beaumont Tiles business, which is a specialist hard flooring business. And we've got a number of tool stores under the Toolkit Depot name. We acquired Adelaide Tools in 2020. We've expanded now into Western Australia. Not long before, we're into a couple of markets here on the east coast of Australia, and then we'll get into New Zealand as well, servicing the specialist tool market. So in all, the Bunnings Group, if you like, has over 500 trading stores across Australia and New Zealand. We employ just over 55,000 Aussies and Kiwis in our team. Most of those team members work in our stores and distribution centres, and a few of us work out of our support centres, which we've got in all major capitals around Australia, and a support centre in Auckland as well. The business started in 1886 with a couple of brothers that came out from the UK with a timber milling business in Fremantle in Western Australia. We became a national entity in 1993 when we bought Bunnings in Western Australia, bought the McEwen's business here in Melbourne, where I'm based. And in 2001, the acquisition of Howard Smith gave us access to the BBC Hardware House business, and that gave us access to the New Zealand market. In the last few years, we've seen significant growth. In the last 3 financial years to the year ended June 30, we saw our revenue grow 30 odd percent, our revenue just a little bit more than that. So really significant growth, and obviously a lot of that fueled by the pandemic that we've lived through, where all of us were spending extended periods of time at home. So revenue for the year ended was pretty close to $18 billion. Our earnings were 2.2 and a bit billion, and return on capital above 70%. So some really strong financial metrics there when you sort of think about the role that and the size and scale of Bunnings, against the landscape of corporate Australia.
I went to Bunnings twice this weekend, so I'm probably like a lot of people who did the same thing. Michael, what do you put the magic down to?
I think the magic's our team, full stop. We've got incredible products, incredible value propositions, but the team are the heart and soul of our business. It's quite a rigorous recruitment process to get a role at Bunnings. We very much recruit for cultural fit. We have a strong bias towards permanent team members. We have a really strong representation of team members who've been, who've got plenty of life experience, whether it's, years and years in fields like carpentry or electrical or horticultural. These sorts of skills really give our team members the confidence to be able to connect and engage. And I think our team members deeply understand their local communities. They live in their local communities. They send their kids to the local schools, sporting clubs, grow up in those communities. They understand what's on the community's mind, and they're able to sort of service, service those needs. And when you complement that with a sort of environment where you can drop the tools in the garden and you're a bit muddy on a Saturday or a Sunday afternoon and just jump in the car and go down to Bunnings. You don't need to scrub up to come in. You can bring your four-legged friend if you want. All these things make it really feel like an extension of the home, and that's something that I think is a really secret part of it. And take our work really, really seriously at Bunnings. We care deeply about our team. We care deeply about our customers. We want to make sure that value proposition is right, but we don't take ourselves seriously. And I think that permeates the culture as well, and is a really important hallmark of where Bunnings is today.
Look, if you had a magic wand and you could change 3 or 4 things, I guess, from where the state and federal government are positioning retail and where the economy is at and where the workforce is at, what would you advise them?
I think there's three that sort of spring to mind for me. One is the safety and well-being of our team. I think the pandemic has brought the very best in the community out, and it's sadly brought some of the worst out. And team members in retail, hospitality, the health sector have had to endure really quite poor behaviour. I think there's been a rise in organised retail crime. I think there's sadly challenges around homelessness and drug abuse, and those things do carry over into retail workplaces. And I think strong legislation to protect the well-being of the team members. Businesses have a very strong responsibility for the welfare of their team, but we need to be backed up with strong legislation as well to make sure that when police are called or an action is taken, that there's an enforcement regime that allows us to keep our team members. I think there is a skill shortage in Australia. I heard just the other day calls here in Victoria for thousands of people to come in and work in hospitality sector. I think one of the unintended consequences of border closures and restrictions on travel and those things is that the sort of skills and attributes that are so desperately needed in hospitality, service, retail, just aren't there at the moment. And it is a real challenge to find people that want to work in these sectors. Some of it does come down to the working environment, and that's probably where I sort of give some thoughts around sort of legislation to keep people safe. But skilled work coming in, and retail businesses are evolving. We've got the same challenges with supply chains and technology that other businesses have. So accessing those skills, and last but not least is a real sort of contemplation of what more national consistency could look like around workplace regulation and other things. I think the pandemic was a sort of a pinch point for sort of seeing just how effective the federation can and can't be, but some really different requirements under COVID, jurisdiction to jurisdiction. I think at one point in time across Australia and New Zealand, between both international, state and intrastate restrictions, we ran the business 15 different ways at one point in time, and that adds cost, it adds complexity. Right. There's an execution risk to that from a team member safety and a customer experience point of view. So safety for our team, skills and national consistency would be 3 for me.
Didn't mention education.
That comes into skills shortage.
It comes skills?
Yeah, absolutely.
What about around technology and cyber, etc.? I think you've been fairly strong and fairly forthright on that in the last 6 to 12 months.
Yeah, look, absolutely. I think we've got a long way to go to get the sort of skills coming out of universities. I think it's getting more boys and girls doing STEM subjects at school. And I was talking to some family members recently. Got a young cousin who's going into grade 9. It was great to hear that he's going to be doing coding next year. I think that's absolutely fantastic to see. But having had kids recently go through the tertiary system, could we get more into data science and technology in those areas? But equally important is trades. How do we get more young people going into trades, because the tertiary path isn't for everybody, and there's clearly a skills shortage on the construction side as well, and in the trade. So education does come into skills. Skilled migration is going to address some of that. Organic skills development, yeah, absolutely, another really important part.
So you were a natural retailer by background? Is it in your DNA? Was it as a young kid? Did you feel you're trading on the side, or
maybe an accidental retailer? I think as young people, we all need a source of income, and the bank of mum and dad, certainly in my family, wasn't a particularly fluid one. So you needed to go out and get a job, and I did that through a little toy shop in the city way back in the mid '80s, and then into Target late in the '80s as I was sort of heading towards the back end of high school. I went to university to be a high school history and English teacher. I realized that wasn't for me. I went on to finish some study and finish an arts degree, but I was fortunate enough to get a traineeship. And I love then and love now working around team, love talking to customers, love product. So I probably fell into retail by accident, but certainly found a home when I was there, and have enjoyed almost all of my career in the retail sector.
Traineeships, they still in full play these days?
Yeah, I remember doing what's called TMP, or the Target Management Program. I'd say that was 91, 92 maybe, but we've got what we call the Future Leader Program. It's a three-stage program for young and old leaders in our business to get into those frontline leadership roles, whether that's a coordinator or department manager in a Bunnings, or a first-level leadership role, and we then complement that with other leadership programs as we go through, both internal, external, and for some of our more specialized team, that includes international study. But I think those leadership programs are really important. Retail, I think, is an industry even today in the 2020s where you can start on the shop floor and build an incredibly successful career, through to executive level, if that's where you would like your career. And we certainly encourage people at Bunnings to put down roots and build fantastic careers. And I love it when I catch up with team members who are doing big important roles in our business or other parts of the Wesfarmers Group, and I can still remember them as a young version of themselves, whether it's pushing a trolley, punching a checkout, or leading a small team in a store, and here they are leading a region or a country or a major function. I think that's just absolutely fantastic.
Now, you did take one sidestep during your career. You moved into banking for a short period of time.
I did.
What were the takeaways?
Oh, I think the financial services industry for me was fantastic. I was a young guy at Target. I was probably more ambitious than my talents were letting me be, and I was typical of my age, and a little bit impatient. And back in those days, there was no internet. That dates you, doesn't it? But there was no internet. And I was reading job ads in a newspaper, and here was a job from a recruiter who was looking for people with retail skills for a financial services business that wanted them. And I went along to the interview not knowing who I was talking to or what the company was, and it turned out to be Westpac Bank, and it turned out to be a fantastic 5 or 6 years. I went in on a accelerated management program. I became a branch manager.
Yep.
Spent time in HR, spent time in small business markets. I spent time in a strategy role. I think banks are incredible for their size, scale, complexity, and the development opportunities that they throw at you. But by sort of 2000, 2001, I'd worked out that it was a great place to be. I liked the people I work with. I did like the customer interaction, but it didn't have the pace and energy that particularly operational retail offers you. And I was fortunate enough to have a couple of contacts that I'd worked with at the bank who'd gone to work for the New Zealand retail business, the Warehouse Group, in a business that they had here in Australia at the time. And I made the shift back to retail, and I wouldn't be anywhere else.
Why do you reckon you stand out?
I think that it's probably for others to maybe run a commentary on what they see the strengths and the weaknesses at. And I think retail is an industry where you work hard, right? Like,
Yeah.
Bunnings support office lights up at 6:30 in the morning. I'm sure that most retail support officers do, because we want to get in, we want to see yesterday's trading performance, we want to think about the day ahead. So there's long hours, there's that. I think you've got to love what you do. I work long hours with Bunnings, and so I should in the role that I'm privileged to occupy. But I don't feel like I'm working all the time. I feel like I'm experiencing things, I'm learning things, I'm curious, I'm traveling, I'm meeting people. So it's energizing. And I think equally importantly, there's hundreds, if not thousands, of people who've kind of seen something in what I've been doing, whether it's positive attitude, taking a risk, taking an opportunity, doing a job that other people didn't want to do. Like years and years and years ago, working in a Target store as a casual, you got paid on the shifts that you went to work for, right? You didn't get paid, when you weren't at work. So if someone wanted me to sweep the back dock or load the skip bin or move stock around in the warehouse, I was happy to do it because I was happy for the money. I was learning skills along the way. I probably didn't consciously think of that at the time. When an opportunity came up to move out of metropolitan Sydney and move out to Dubbo in 1993 and help open a Target store, there wasn't a huge queue of people that wanted to do it. And I said, why not? I'm young, I'm single, go live in the country for a while.
Yep.
It was a different experience moving around and doing things when maybe other people didn't want to do it. You gave yourself every opportunity to succeed, and you needed people in your personal life, partners, family, friends, kids, who would be prepared to sacrifice, but also those leaders that would take a chance on you. And I have a very strong mindset today of trying to pay that forward and giving other people opportunities, whether it's someone who reaches out randomly on LinkedIn and says, hey, can I at least have a chat to someone about a job? It's just as easy to pass those details on as it is to say no or not reply. And I've always tried to have that as a mantra. And, I think, to be really honest, there's always going to be an element of good luck. I think whether that's serendipity and being in the right place at the right time with the right skills, or being the person around when the boss looked around for someone to do something. I think there's always going to be an element of that. And, I think that combination of hard work, liking what you do, being surrounded by good people, that's a happy cocktail of fuel for making your career a successful one.
Any wisdom along the way? Some good advice that has really stuck beside you?
Yeah, it normally comes in the form of constructive feedback. So some of that, given the generation of leaders I worked under, some of the language is probably not 2022 to correct. But I think everyone sort of says don't be afraid to make mistakes. I think that is important, and I think ultimately learning from them. Some of the best feedback I've ever been given has been where my performance, wasn't as strong as it could be, or you've let people down because behaviour, attitude maybe wasn't on the mark where it needed to be. So I think I've always learnt from that. The other thing that, I think this is an important attribute for leaders, full stop, is that, gut feeling comes from, I think, a combination of your experiences and your value set, and for me, values like honesty and integrity, and everyone says the same thing. So, I'm sure it's the case, but if you hold those things true to you and you then complement that with the experiences, and my career's been a little bit of a patchwork quilt, if you, those that know what I've done over the years, I've worked in operational roles, HR roles, finance roles, those sorts of things have been in my mind. So you end up with a few different lenses through which you're thinking about or solving, problems, and then you overlay that with your value set. That's what I call gut instinct. And I think some of the best decisions have been where I've said, no, I'm going to let that opportunity go past. That's been, at times opportunities to consider a new job in a new business. And I think that's where you've got to have people around you who you can confide in and get good advice from as well, who sort of know you well enough to sort of speak truth to you and sort of go, is that really you? Is that a good fit? Or that actually sounds exactly like the sort of thing that you'd love to do. So why don't you get in and go for it? And I think the real art is what you say no to, more so than what you say yes to.
When did you make your move to Bunnings?
Joined Bunnings in August 2005. So touched on the fact that I was working for the Warehouse Group. Warehouse Group decided to divest their Australian assets. They were able to sell them into a private equity business that were merging a few deep discount department businesses together. I did have an opportunity to stay with them, but the way the role was described to me was such that probably didn't have the appeal. I love seeing people get jobs and creating jobs, and there was going to be a lot of work, as often happens in a turnaround, where a lot of jobs are shed and assets sort of exited and those sorts of things. So that didn't feel like a fit for the sort of leadership that I wanted. And I'd been a bit involved in my years at Westpac with some org restructuring and doing redundancies and those things. So it didn't have an appeal. But I was, in my mid-30s, had 2 young kids, had a mortgage, had school fees to pay. So I needed a job. And, through a recruiter I work with, became aware of a role at Bunnings. It was a state manager role in New South Wales, and came on board in 2005. And having had a couple of jobs over the years that had sort of gone 4 or 5, 6 years, figured here's the next 4 or 5, 6 years of my career. I'll be at Bunnings. I didn't know a huge amount about the business and knew their size and scale, but didn't spend a lot of time in their stores because there wasn't one near to where I was living at the time. But in I went, and 17 and a bit years later, here I am. So I've obviously gone against the grain of what I'd done traditionally. But, after the first 6, 12 months at Bunnings, I found somewhere I could put down roots and grow, and felt connected to the team, and have loved almost every minute of my time at Bunnings. You have your great days and your average days, but for me, it's a place I feel I can do the very best work that I can possibly do, and do that in a way that is also being the best version of myself. And I think that's a very happy coincidence.
Managing Director, 2016?
Yep.
Classic question. It's a tough gig to be appointed amongst your peers.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's some others out there very competitive, and then suddenly they've got to work with you or report in, whatever way you want to structure it. Were you ready for the role?
No, absolutely not. And I think, like a lot of people that come into leadership roles like this, you probably have a period of imposter syndrome. I'd work with some incredibly talented executives. I'd worked for incredibly talented executives, and those big shoes to fill syndrome absolutely kicks in. One of the great qualities of the leadership team that I was a part of today, and in fact the leadership team I have today, is the collegiality of the team. And I think that when you're given the opportunity to lead, you have to also earn the right to lead. And I think, in Bunnings, we've got leadership principles. They're integrity, respect, teamwork, achievement, innovation. And the first two, integrity and respect, for me, are an equation. If you add them together, you get trust. And I think if you can if you can establish that trust with your colleagues, and some of the people on our leadership team, 6 and a bit years later, the same executives that were on the executive team back in 2016. Some have retired and moved on to other parts of the group or done other things. But we've got strong personal connection. We have robust conversation for sure. But if it comes back to common respect for one another and trust, then you earn the right to lead. And I think that's something that's important. And I had that opportunity in 2007 when I moved from state to national. I ended up leading the same team I'd been a part of, and you learn from things that worked really well and things, if you had a second opportunity to lead a team you'd been a peer of in a different way, and you apply those learnings. And I've been incredibly privileged and fortunate to be the person that leads the team at Bunnings. It's a brand that we're incredibly proud of. It's a team we love being a part of. And we have fun every day.
So when you were given the role, you go home that night, you probably sit down, get a pen and paper or whatever you're going to do, and probably like most good leaders, you're thinking ahead. When the day I'll walk out, what's going to be that imprint? What's going to be that legacy? In that mind that night or the next couple of days, what was going through your head?
Don't stuff up was the first thought that came to mind, because, as I said, I was coming in behind an incredibly strong managing director. I did have, truthfully, I had a little bit of time because, as some would recall, we bought a business in the UK, and my predecessor moved into a sort of a group CEO role. So I was able to continue to work with my colleagues in a slightly different way. So in some ways, I had a little bit of warning that the role was coming. So I had a bit of time in late 2015 to turn my mind to what that would look like. But when I think about legacy, and I think that I don't think a lot about legacy, because I'm really interested in making sure that the business is performing well today, and we've got a clear strategic plan for 3, 4, 5 years down the track. But there's a lot of things that I can't control, and you learn to accept those. In a role like this, one of them is what customers are going to want a decade from now. I'd love to be walking into a Bunnings a decade from now and seeing a vibrant business, but there'll be products that are being sold that haven't been invented yet. There are products we sell today that weren't invented a decade ago. There'll be categories that we're participating in that we don't participate in today because customer needs change, services and experiences that customers are looking for. But I can influence culture. And culture comes to the people we recruit, the training, the systems, the development, the way we listen and connect and engage with our team. And to me, hopefully this example will make sense, but I grew up in a little fibro house in Sydney, and my uncle still lives in it. Mum and dad have passed away. They passed away a few years ago. My uncle still lives in the house I grew up in. I walk into that house, it still feels like home. Everything is different. The room I had as a child, the room my brother had as a child, the kitchen's been remodeled, all these things, it still feels like home. And I think if in 10 years' time I walk into a Bunnings and it feels the same way it does today, whether the team is still wearing a red shirt and an apron, or the racking's red, or we're selling all home improvement products or something else, but it still feels the same way, and there's a barbecue out the front, or there's friendly, helpful team, then the culture will have lived on. I'll have done the thing that I set out to do, which is keep a strong and vibrant culture, strong and vibrant. And if that happens, our team are happy and engaged. And if our team are happy and engaged, chances are our customers are. And if our customers are happy and engaged, the business will be performing well, and the rest will take care of itself.
Well, you touched on about the future thinking. With regards to technology, smart technology, maybe people aren't buying houses as much as they used to. Maybe that may change. What does future thinking look like?
Yeah, there's lots of different things. Where do we have a natural right to play? If you think about the physical home, we see that, we drive home every day, but, increasingly Australians and New Zealanders are towing parts of their home around the country. The mobile home, what can we do in terms of, fit out and maintenance of that? How do we service the whole family? Do we service just the humans in the house? Can we service the, pets or some of the pets in the house? There's lots of different ways we think about things. You touched on home automation. That's going to continue to evolve. I think it's going to become far more integrated. Our generation, the biggest tech change was, tape to disc, or the winner between VHS and Betamax. I think there'll be some winners in the home improvement, in the home automation space. I think there'll be some platforms that emerge as preferred, whether that's being driven by Google or Amazon or whoever it is. And I think as that sort of becomes a more normed element of how we use technology in our homes, that will only grow. At the moment, I've got 6 or 7 different apps for using technology: the watering system, the lighting system, the oven and the microwave, the alarm system, the lights. I can see all that integrating into one platform. Then I think home automation really takes off. Building materials, the way we build our homes will change to make them more environmentally sustainable, to use less energy. All these sorts of things will continue to evolve, and our teams are out scouring the world all the time, looking at those products, going to trade fairs, talking to suppliers to make sure that we do stay at the cutting edge of that. So we do stay relevant for our customers, not only in the products that we offer, but the services that complement that, and the knowledge of our team members to sell the products as well.
And the impact of, is it Generation Z? What's that looking like?
Yeah, it's an exciting time, right? This is a generation that are growing up, completely interconnected. I got two of them that call me dad. So, I got a front row seat to sort of what life looks like through their eyes to some extent. But they're staying at home with parents longer. When they are moving out, they're moving into shared accommodation. Housing's expensive. They're buying homes a little bit later in life. They're starting families. But the research tells us the aspiration to own their own home is still strong, not only in Australia but in other parts of the world. Introducing them to DIY is changing. When I first started doing odd jobs around the house, the very first job that paid me any sort of living was mowing my neighbour's lawn. You used a two-stroke lawnmower. You had to know how to sort of clean a spark plug and change the blades. Yeah, if I can talk my kids into mowing the lawn for me today, they're plugging a battery and pressing a button. The foundational DIY skills are actually changing. So
Yeah, right.
even what kids use in woodwork or metalwork or any of those sorts of things, the sort of tools they're using, the tools we used at using woodwork were all hand tools and maybe a big bench drill or something like that. Today it's all battery operated. So the foundational skills are changing, and introducing that next generation to DIY is coming through craft, it's coming through recycling furniture, it's coming through gardens where you're growing your own food, those sorts of things. So we're bringing that generation through in a different way. And we connect to them very differently. We connect to them socially. We've got an extensive YouTube channel. We've got thousands of videos on our YouTube channel. We had, I think in 2021, we had about 642,000 hours of YouTube content consumed, a lot of that by that next generation, and we connect them through social media. We have millions of views on TikTok. We have thousands of views on Instagram and Facebook. So we want to be where our customers are and earn the right to be chosen no matter of their age.
And the customer experience, it never ends. What happens here? Where's the juxtaposition? There's someone, as you said earlier, who's been around the block, been there and done it as a builder, a plumber, tiler, etc. Or am I going to go online? Where do you see it playing in the next 10, 15 years? Is that model going to, is it going to completely change? Is it going to change dramatically? What do you see?
It is going to change. If I think about my first experiences of hardware and home improvement were I think it's a Thrifty Link hardware store now in Cox's Road in North Ryde in Sydney. It'd be the size of a shoebox, but it's morphed to become large warehouses. It's morphed to become in-home design and consultancy for kitchens and bathrooms and gardens. It's morphed to on-site for tradies. It's morphed to in the palm of your hand or on your desktop or your tablet for online shopping. It's really anywhere that you want to go, and you'd imagine that that will continue with optical software, glasses, those sorts of things. So once upon a time, you went to the store. Today, Bunnings, you can shop online, you can shop in store, you can shop in home, you can shop with people in your home supporting you, shop on the phone. You can where a customer wants to be is where we want to be, and we want to be relevant to that customer. We want to be inspiring and informing before a customer shops. Doing their product comparisons. They might secure core part of their project online and pick it up in store and then shop for the rest of that product with the in-store experience. They might want everything delivered to home. We have over 1 million deliveries to our customers every year across our consumer and commercial business. So we just want to earn the right to be chosen wherever a customer wants to shop with us.
And you're experimenting with the labs? That's worked out well?
Yeah, look, we're experimenting with lots of different centers and concepts, and I think that if you're not playing around in these spaces early on, you're not learning. You're not having the failings that you need to take to be able to actually understand where it's at. And we've got some strong collaboration with global peers. We've got a really strong relationship with a South American home improvement chain called Sodomac, a German home improvement chain called Hornbach. Strong relationships with businesses like Home Depot and Leroy Milan. This is important because we're learning from the things that they're doing, they're learning from us, and all of that's allowing us to be competitive and relevant for our customer.
Talk about learnings. What was the learnings for a company which had nothing but success when you embarked on the opportunity in the UK? What was the big learnings from that experiment?
Yeah, it's a challenging, really challenging time, for the business. I think there've been a lot of competitive activity, here in Australia, and we saw an opportunity. I think there are a couple of markets in the world where a retailer like Bunnings could be successful. UK's one, United States is one. Clearly, the competitive dynamic in somewhere like the US with Home Depot, Lowe's, Menards makes it almost insane to even contemplate going there, and that's why we categorically don't contemplate going to the US. But UK is different. There's a strong connection with the home. Homebase had an established network of over 250 stores. It was good from a connection to the customer. But I think the scale of turnaround and the way that, we needed to bring customers on the journey for the UK was, a bridge too far for us. I think we probably, underestimated the scale of turnaround. And I think what we've been successful at doing over a long time at Bunnings is running here in Australia is running a successful business and iterating that success with incremental improvement over time. And with the UK, it was a turnaround. And what we did was we took a team of really talented executives and asked them to take on a turnaround, and they didn't have that turnaround skill set. And that was one of the challenges. And I think the other learning for us is when you've got the tyranny of distance that you have and the really significant time zones, that ability to sort of undertake quite radical sort of surgery on a business is quite complicated. So the decision to exit, which is heading to 5 years ago now, wasn't an easy decision that we took, but it was the right decision for our shareholders, the right decision for the team that run Homebase in the UK today are doing an incredible job. We've got a great connection and relationship to them. The MD and CFO were people that we recruited and put into the business, and I'm really proud of the hard work that they've put in and the success that they're starting to see come through. And I'm really excited by the road ahead for our business here in Australia and New Zealand.
You think you're going to go offshore again?
You'd never say never, but I see an enormous growth runway. We've got a business here in Australia, we've got a business in New Zealand. We sell quite extensively into neighbouring islands and the Pacific. We don't think we need a physical presence in those markets. That's got its own set of people and supply chain challenges. I think you need to find markets where you've got that cultural alignment. I think English as a first language is important, and there's not that many parts of the world where that's the case. English is widely spoken, but it's not necessarily a first language once you get out of 5 or 6, major countries around the world. So I think for Bunnings under my tenure, I've got lots of things I can see us doing over the next few years that are going to help us grow in Australia, which is why we made the acquisition of Beaumont Tiles and Adelaide Tools and morphing it into Toolkit Depot. We see significant opportunities in the commercial space. We're not taking our foot off the accelerator in the consumer space with product innovation, using space more effectively, improving the in-store and online experience. So plenty for us to do.
And that includes looking at the tradie market, moving more into that?
Absolutely. The trading market's been
Yeah.
good. For a decade, Bunnings has been, if you went back 15 years, I think, tradies would probably tell you that the Bunnings was a bit of a also ran when it came to trade and didn't really take trade seriously. And I think some of that is true and fair. And for sure, we put a lot of emphasis on being, the first choice for DIYers. But slowly but surely, our strategy over the last decade has been to connect, genuinely and sincerely with our trades, offer a meaningful account program, offer products and services that are unique to the trades, and we've seen that momentum grow. We've got well over 1 million online transactions through our PowerPass app every year with our trade customers. We've got hundreds of thousands of small businesses across Australia, and that continues to grow. And the feedback that our tradies are giving us is that we've got this really strong, compelling offer, very convenient in terms of our physical locations, very convenient in terms of our long trading hours. So many of our trade competitors don't trade Sundays, and for many tradies, getting ready for the week ahead is really important. Complementing that with Beaumont Tiles, complementing that with Toolkit Depot means that we access brands and services and selling platforms that make no sense to put in a Bunnings warehouse, but are important for the trades. And being able to service them through the same account program that they use at Bunnings has a enormous appeal to tradies, and the results have been very, very strong. Commercial now makes up 35-36% of our revenue. When I started in Bunnings in 2005, it was probably 15%. So,
Yeah, right.
that's
Okay.
happened with our consumer business growing. It's not like our consumer business stood still. Our commercial business is just growing very, very strongly, and our commercial team are world class in their field and doing incredible work.
From the formula, lowest prices, widest range and best experience. That's still the mantra?
That's still the mantra. Best experience is new in the sense that we used to say lowest prices, widest range, best service. As we widen our offer to go into customers' homes, to do more online, we recognise that we talked about it before, but the way the customers touch and feel and experience the brand has really widened, and it is now an experience. It's not just service delivery in the store, but for our store teams, best service is still top of mind. We have everything from acknowledging the customer when they're around us in the store, to providing knowledgeable advice, to a really fast checkout experience. That service experience in store is, and has always been and will always be, critical. But we do recognise that the experience is there. Ultimately, if you've got a winning offer, we work hard through our widest range and lowest prices strategies to have that winning offer, and you have an incredible team delivering that best experience, and you do things that build trust. Be straight with your customers, be straight with your team, care for your team, live your policies, work proactively with regulators and stakeholders to be seen to be trustworthy, and walk the talk, not just say nice things and put little signs up and then not live that. If you're building trust, if you get those three elements right, then I think long-term successful financial performance is the outcome. And that's been our formula for 28 years under the Bunnings Warehouse shingle, and will be for many years to come.
So has the basics of retail really changed much?
You buy stock, you move it, and you sell it. That's sort of
Yeah.
been the mantra for a long time. I think customers just have an explosion of choice. Not only choice of where to shop and how to shop, but who to shop with. Brands and businesses that once upon a time you had to find if you're going to be a big brand, you needed to find a big retailer to sort of give you that footprint, give you that brand awareness.
Yeah.
You and I, after this podcast, could sort of sit around over a coffee and come up with an idea and go to market on our own and build a successful business, right? That didn't happen even 5 years ago. So the market is intensely competitive, and that's why you've got to fight hard every day to earn the right to be chosen.
So what's the biggest threats in the back of your mind?
Big threats in the back of my mind. Lots of different things. I think we're staring into some uncertain economic conditions. Off the back of what's been a pretty uncertain time, but that's a cycle, right? We've been in business, for 136 years. We've seen booms, busts, depressions, recessions, wars, and a couple of pandemics, right? So it's not like any of it's particularly new. So it's that resilience in your business model to see your way through. I think that accessing talent is a challenge, and I think we've got to work really hard to be a great place to work and a place to put down those roots and grow and build a successful career. I think you've got to really listen carefully to what your customers are asking for and adapt and respond. Adapt your range, adapt your service offering, constantly focusing on the value proposition so that you're relevant. And I think if you're doing those things, then you give yourself the best shot at being as successful as you can be. If a market is shrinking, we want to shrink less than everyone else. And if a market is booming, we want to be booming more than everyone else. Our goal is to grow the market, grow our share, and outperform however the market is playing. And if we can do that in a very disciplined and consistent way, try and avoid distractions and avoid the sort of white noise that sort of floats around, then we're going to give ourselves every shot.
You mentioned a number of times so far, just in this short interlude, roots to grow. Roots to grow, roots to grow.
Put down roots and grow.
And it struck you as well when you started there.
Yeah.
Is that so much different to every other organisation in Australia?
I think so. And look, it's 17 years in a business. You certainly drink a little bit of the Kool-Aid, right? That's a given. But I talk to people around in my peer groups. It's rare for people to have been in a job as long as I have, and I sit in an executive team where at least 5 or 6 of my colleagues have got 5 to almost 20 years more experience than me in this business. We've got a team member in our WA network in our Claremont store who's had 63, 64 years of service in our business. I get the privilege of writing letters to anyone in our business who's had 30 or more years. Some of my colleagues write letters for people at 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. Came back from leave this week, been on leave for a couple of weeks. Took me, I'd say, honestly, 35, 40 minutes to sign letters and write a few nice words for what felt like quite a thick deck of letters of people who had 30, 35, 40, 50 years service in the business. I think that is unique, and people don't just start at Thursday night, Saturday casual age. We've got people who join us at second, third careers, in their 40s, 50s, 60s, and are building 10, 15, 20, 25-year careers in our business. And I think that's something that is unique. And I think that comes through in the style of people you meet when you walk down an aisle in a Bunnings store.
Nearly a third of your team are over the age of 50.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I don't see that everywhere else in Australia either, do I?
No, I think a lot of places you get to that sort of age, and people start suggesting you go do other things, particularly in industries where there's a bit of manual handling. I used to love rattling off that stat because I wasn't yet 50, but that changed last year, and now I'm one of that third. But I feel very welcome in it. But yeah, I think it's just really natural. A lot of people have asked us over time, what are our strategies around that? I think our hiring managers, our store managers, our recruiting team, they just value the life skills and the experience. And what's great is to watch the skills transfer in our stores between workers with a few more laps around the earth than some, taking their life experience and sharing it, and that third party affirmation from an older gentleman to a younger gentleman, or an older female team member to a young woman or a young guy about the things that they can learn, and equally the skills transfer the other way around tech. I was talking with a team member not long ago in one of our stores. He's in his 70s, and we run an enterprise social media platform here called Workplace, which is effectively Facebook for the workplace. And he had no idea how to work it. And one of the young teams showed him, and suddenly he's talking to his grandkids on Facebook and Instagram as well. So those life skill transfers are pretty cool.
Are you on the floor on a regular basis?
As often as I can be, which isn't as often as I'd like. Quite often on a weekend, I've got a couple of local stores that are the luckiest Bunnings on the planet to have the MD as one of their local customers. The beauty of visiting those stores often is that they get to know you as a person, and I think that's really important. We have we don't stand on any ceremony. As I said earlier, we take our work seriously, but not ourselves. When we go visit stores, if you didn't know who I was, I'd look the same as every other team in my red shirt, my apron, all the pins and badges and those sorts of things. And we want to be able to blend in and serve, and we actively serve customers while we're in store. And that's where you learn things. And I've got a rich array of colleagues and friends and family members who work across Bunnings, and you're listening, you're learning all the time. And if you're not out there talking to customers, talking to team members, then you really will think the world smells like fresh paint, and that's a really dangerous place for execs to find themselves.
What, in your mind, then, is real leadership? You touched on it little bit, but like you said, you walked into some pretty big boots to fill.
Yeah.
You had to stand for what you were. So what's your leadership?
I put it around four themes. Conveniently for me, I've found 4 words that all start with the same letter. I call them my 4 H's. But the first one's honesty. I think in leadership, if you're a straight shooter and you're acting with integrity, and people believe in you and believe what you say, and you back that up with action, so you're walking the talk, then you earn the right to be trusted, and people will follow that leadership, even if they don't necessarily like what's happening or maybe even believe it's right, but there's a sense of belief and trust. And with that comes a responsibility to be doing the right things when people aren't watching, which is what integrity is all about. But that is very much about trust. And I expect, if not demand, that from the people around me. So that means that you're getting the good news and the bad news. I want bad news to travel much faster than even good news in our business, so we can learn and address problems and issues as quickly as we can. The second one, I think, speaks to the Bunnings brand. I think Bunnings, you asked me the size and scale of Bunnings, earlier on. It's pretty large organization. But the most common question I get asked when I say, we're all curious people, right? So you're out somewhere and someone says, where do you work? And I say, I work at Bunnings. And I'm proud to say that. I've worked for brands that wasn't quite as proud to say where I work, but with Bunnings, I feel really, really proud. And the next question that almost always follows is, which store do you work at? And I think that's a really special thing, because that says my connection with your brand is my local store. People don't see a big organization. They understand Bunnings is big, but their connection is with their local store. And I think it is that team members that they know, community groups that they can support, almost any Aussie that's had a school-aged child who's played a junior sports, cooked a barbecue, they sort of get how that all works. And I think that's where that sort of humility comes from. And I think as a business, why we don't take ourselves seriously, as leaders, in terms of titles and hierarchy and all that sort of palaver, allows us to sort of keep a pretty humble mindset. I see myself genuinely at the bottom of the organization, not the top, so that I can help others to be successful. You asked a little bit earlier about success and career and all those sorts of things, and I'm here today because in 1990, a lady who was a store manager for my Target store took a chance on giving me a management traineeship. If she'd ignored that and I'd gone on to do something else, I'd be a completely different person doing a completely different thing, right? So we're here because people gave us a chance. I'm here because a hiring manager gave me a job at Westpac. I'm here because a divisional CEO helped me get a job in small business markets. I'm here because a former colleague got me a job at the Warehouse Group. I'm here because a recruiter I work with got me a job at Bunnings. I'm here because my boss at the time promoted me. The third H is all about helpfulness. It's paying that forward and recognizing that we've got a responsibility to help young people build great careers, help old people build great careers, help people into opportunities, help people to find the next thing to give them joy. Because I think that's important. And last but not least, we're all here for a finite period. Some of us are lucky to live long, happy, successful lives, and others that's taken away from them tragically short. And some people, you just look and go, you're just so unlucky to be where you were when that happened, right? And we reflected on that at this point in time 20 years ago for some of our countrymen in Bali, right? So if you're not happy, then get out and find the thing that's going to make you happy, because you're going to get to a point in time in your life where you're going to go, you don't get a chance to go, I wish I go back and do, or could I go back and do that? You're not going to get that chance. You're going to be faced with some pretty tough choices. So, without being morbid, you want to get to the other end of your life and kind of go, I'd much rather get there and go, oh, that was pretty stupid, and have a laugh about it, than I wish I'd gone off and done something. So I think happiness is a pretty important factor. So for me, it's honesty, humility, helpfulness, and happiness. And, hopefully those that work around me, if you were to talk to them about me, would say, yeah, that's a fair reflection most days of the week about what Mike's about.
So what do you think what's happening in Australian society at the moment? The conversations I'm having with most chief execs, when you close the door, productivity's down. Why is it down? I'm talking around decision-making, speed of decision-making, getting to my customer, getting revenue up, to make sure those relationships are good, bouncing new ideas around, thinking about that lab team that I've got, flying off to get the people off to Israel, etc., and doing some innovation. It's down. And one big challenge I'm having, I can't get people back into the office. We're going back into work. And this is consistent message from CEOs across the country. 3 days a week, best I can do. What's going on out there in that regard? Because if I was sitting there if I was a young bloke, I'd be putting my hand up saying, I'll work 5 days a week because I'm going to get seen. I'm going to do exactly what you did. I want to get that thing done by the time I'm 50, put myself in a good position and not have any regrets, and not look over my shoulder and think, well, what should I have done? But I'm going to best place myself. But do you think something's missing, or what are your thoughts with regard to Australian society and where that's at?
It's a great question. Look, I think pre-pandemic, there were some pretty big themes that we were talking about in leadership circles: technology and the evolution of technology, drive for flexibility and equality in the workplace. I think the pandemic accelerated those things. If we'd been talking this time 2019, not this time 2022, and you'd said, what jobs at Bunnings could be done from home, lots could. And I think retail's got a natural advantage, right? Like, we're on the road all the time in our stores, we're out with our suppliers, we're working flexibly anyway. Like, I've worked flexibly and remotely for as long as I can remember, and I've got a frequent flyer account to sort of validate that. So,
Yeah.
I think retail's maybe a bit different like that. But I'd have said, payroll department, that can't work at home because they're dealing with confidential information. Our planning team can't work at home because they need printers that can print A0 and A1 pieces of paper. Guess what? They can all work from home. And we bought, I don't know how many laptops in March 2020, and we dispatched hundreds of people home to work from home for extended periods of time. And being a Victorian, we had more time at home than
Everyone else
most
in the world.
of us, right?
Yeah.
So it was a long slog. So I think people have learnt to work in different ways. We're encouraging people to come to work for the community and the connection and engagement, but the reality is people want to work in different ways. That's what they're telling us. And if we say to people, well, the only way to get ahead is be in the office 5 days a week, or the only way to get ahead is that, then I think we're missing something. We've got to find ways to see people, not just be seen, but to see people and foster connection and engagement. I'm not seeing any productivity loss at Bunnings from working flexibly, but I do think, as I said, retail is different. A lot of our team have to go to work, so the thing that we're mindful of is that our store teams have to pull on a red shirt and have to put on that apron. Our DC teams put on their high vis. They go to the DCs. They've got no choice. They can work full-time, part-time, casual. They can work in different departments. They can work across multiple stores. So there's lots of flexibility, but it's flexibility built around the working environment. And we're a store support function. So our store support teams are out in our stores, are in our support centers, are in our supplier factories.
Absolutely.
But I think I don't think we go back to a world where we're all in the office 5 days a week. But I think the idea that productivity is dropping, I think that comes down to what you're asking people to do, and then the framework. And I talk to some of the CEOs that you probably talk to, and it is interesting how we all view the world. And some want to see the work and see the output. I've always been a leader that has judged people on the outcome, not the input.
But I'm talking about quick ideas, smarts, etc. You know, they're coming back and saying it's slow. It's slow. It's slower than what it used to be. That is output.
Yeah.
That is outcome.
And I think it'll depend on. I think some of that is going to depend on industry. I think some of it is also where demand is. I think the other thing is, don't underestimate the fatigue factor.
I'm not. Like, I agree 100% with you.
I do a lot of work in the mental health space, right? And it's a pretty fragile community out there. You asked me earlier what governments can be doing. I talked about sort of welfare of our team. We see that, right? We see it in our own team and calls to our mental health providers. You know, those numbers are up. They vary jurisdiction to jurisdiction, but it's a pretty fragile place. And I think that when you've been at home for long periods of time, and even in the jurisdictions where we weren't asked to be at home, ultimately my Perth team working at home because they're talking to a team in Melbourne who were at home. Not a lot of point, getting in the car in Joondalup, driving to our office in East Perth and sitting on a screen staring at someone at home all day, right? You might as well work from home yourself. And, but I do think there is some fatigue, and I think that that's going to take some time to unwind. And I do think that people in some industry sectors and in certain communities are going to go, I want to live my life in a different way. And that may well lead to some productivity drain. The other thing is just that there's sectors that aren't fully back. There's sectors that aren't fully back because they can't resource up.
That's true.
That's probably dampening demand for services in other industries. So if you're a business that's not working at full stretch, are you looking for as much output from an auditor? Are you looking as much output from an accountant or a lawyer? Maybe not. So I think that this is an interconnected web across, multiple verticals within the economy that will take some time to unwind. And I do think that there's a period of time. My working hypothesis is that for a variety of reasons, Australia might be 6-12 months behind other parts of the world. Having traveled this year to Israel, to the US, to Canada, to Europe, and a couple of those markets a couple of different times. Open borders because of the porous nature of the US and Europe meant that for 2021, a lot of different parts of the world started to get back on with life. In Australia, this time a year ago, Melbourne was a very different place to where Melbourne is now, and that was late 2021. So when you think about it, we've got some more time still ahead of us to sort of re-normal. It's great to have everyone back at a NRL or AFL grand final. It's going to be great to watch a full crowd at the Melbourne Cup. It was great to see, the Aussie Open at the start of the year, reasonably back to normal. But they're moments in time, and people have clearly learnt they say it takes 3 months to learn new behaviours. We've had 2 years of that. So there's behaviours that have been built in and learned. They're going to take time to unwind. And I think as leaders, we're going to be teasing and coaxing and encouraging some of those traditional skills back out, and then learning new skills and learning new ways to get productivity gains. I'd also argue that once upon a time we'd have sat in a studio together, have this.
Oh no, brilliant! We can do this, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's fantastic, and I'm more productive because I can do this because I didn't have to fly to Sydney. Or you didn't have to fly to Melbourne. I don't have to go from one side of town to the other. But that might mean that I get home an hour earlier today than I would have once upon a time sitting around Sydney Airport waiting for my flight to inevitably be delayed back to Melbourne, right? And those sorts of things are giving us some other gains. So I think there are some swings and roundabouts, and I also think it's just going to take some time to get to a point where we feel we've found the next normal. I don't think it's a new normal. I think it's the next normal.
Yeah, okay. A couple of sort of hypotheticals to throw to you as a business leader in Australia. So there's been a strong argument to, as you said, flexible working, 3 days a week. But at the same time, it's getting disseminated all day long about mental well-being. And I agree with you about fatigue. As a CEO and as a leader, and we're supposedly caring about our people, and you think about when you're a younger person, are you better served being at home, looking at the four walls with your mate down the corridor doing the same stuff from his laptop or her laptop, or are we better getting them into the office or getting them back on? Again, retail is different, right? More broader discussion, getting people back in where they're socially engaged, socially challenged, mentally challenged, and feeling a part of something, and maybe they won't have these issues long term that we're talking about. It just seems to be a very strong argument about mental wellness, but at the same time, if you could bring them back in, I agree, it may not be 5 days a week, but are we missing a trick here in hearing the other side of the argument? That's the first part. The second part, which is coming at me, which is interesting, senior executives are saying because people are staying at home more, the workload is increasingly heavier burdened on them. And they're really feeling it about your fatigue you're talking about. I'm really feeling it. I'm really feeling it hard because I'm picking up these people aren't coming necessarily back. They're well known in the organisation. They know everybody in the organisation. They rely on that, but they've somehow forgot many years ago, as you said rightly, many years ago, someone took them under their wing. They're not necessarily doing that. There's a bit of selfishness being played out there. There's interesting dynamics at the moment, Michael. Just sort of, have you seen that across the sort of the landscape?
Yeah, the answer is probably all of the above. Like I think, the way we've sort of said to talk to our team is, we'd love to see in the office 5-6 days a fortnight, right? So firstly, we widen the lens, right? Sort of, and then we define fortnight as 14 days because people do live their lives in really different ways. And remember, we've had 2 years of being told stay home. And it varies market to market, but we've pretty much been told. So we've had 8 behavioural cycles of being told to work a different way. So if we work the assumption it takes 3 months to build a behaviour, we've had 8 of those cycles where we've had that behaviour reinforced. So it might take 8, 10, 12 cycles to undo it, maybe more, maybe never will get undone. For some people, working at home means they're not getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning, sitting on the Monash freeway for an hour and a half to get to the office, to sit in a cubicle and not talk to anyone all day, to sit on a car and go home. Some people are sitting at home, staring at a blank wall, being unproductive. Are some people being unproductive and stealing time? Possibly. Love to think that there's no one in the Bunnings team that's doing that. But the reality is there are other people who are going, you know what, I've got 3 hours back in my day where I can exercise, I can spend a bit more time helping my kids with the homework, I can eat a bit better because I'm not worrying about running down to the canteen and finding something for lunch. There's going to be swings and roundabouts for executives. It's what's the environment you're creating? What are the expectations around output are you creating? I think if you're really clear on deliverables and those sorts of things, for me personally, and I think every exec is different, I couldn't give a tinker's cuss where you work because
Yeah,
I've got right now I've got people working in Europe, I've got people working in the US, I've got people in parts of Asia, I've got people in New Zealand because we've sent them there to do work, right? I've got to have that trusting environment, but I've got to have clear KPIs and clear measures. But what we do is if we see that team aren't coming to work at all, we're working with them and understanding why, and then getting them back into the workplace. But when they're here, we're making sure we're doing things with them that are actually letting us as executives see them, understand their skills, spend that quality time talking to them to understand the potential, taking them under our wing to be able to give them the development, and in doing so, making that rewarding. We've equally got people who could not wait to get back to the office 5 days a week. We've got plenty of people who couldn't wait because they're living in a shared house. They've got absolutely no desire to sit there and listen to their flatmates Zoom call all day. They want to be at work. So I think it's the challenge is it's there's no one size fits all, and that's the hard part as leaders is that it'd be much easier if we could have everything in a box, black and white, 8 o'clock Monday to 5 o'clock Friday. Unfortunately, I think the world was already moving there and we've been hyper accelerated into it. But from a Bunnings point of view, and it's really the only lens I'm qualified to comment on, we're really fortunate that we've got a committed team who I haven't missed a beat. We've not missed a range review. We've not missed a supplier engagement. We've not missed a new product or new store launch where I've got, it's because people are at home and they're bumming around not doing things. In fact, it's the opposite. I probably worry a little bit that some of my team who are working at home are burning the candle at both ends. And for a lot of us, particularly in the last couple of years, working from home became living at work. And I think that's a really unhealthy, really unhealthy place to be as well, because sometimes it's just hard to go, you know what, I'm done for the day. I'm going to go walk the dog or whatever. It's just easier to stay working. So, yeah.
Challenges, again, we're talking about the economy, inflation, interest rates, supply chain. Is the supply chain going to level out roughly by Christmas globally? Are we getting close to that now?
Whether it's Christmas or sometime into 2023, it will moderate. We're starting to see a bit more normalization in shipping now. It would appear there's a bit more consistency in China with factory opening and closures and port opening and closures with the changes in lockdown policies. They were obviously sourced, from all around the globe, and it has been difficult, but it is starting to moderate. I think inflation, will cycle through over time. There's been hyperinflation in categories that we operate in, like timber and steel, that are starting to moderate. There's some moderation in source materials in other places. So again, it's a cycle, right? And we will work our way through the cycle. It is going to be challenging for us as an EDLP retailer. We are well placed to offer a strong value proposition to customers at an entry price point or at a more discretionary price point, if that's where customers want to go. But I think that there's more ahead of us. I think there's some genuine challenges geopolitically. I think that here in Australia, we are really insulated from some of the things that we see in Europe. I went to a home improvement network conference in Copenhagen in, I think it was May or June, and for our European colleagues, the threat of conflict is very real, right? And we're a little bit insulated from those things. So I think there's a lot of different things going on. So it brings you back to what can we control? We can control the care and well-being of our team. We can, to some extent, control our inventory position. We can control the quality and pricing of our offer. Sticking to those basics, is what we need to do, and as best as we can, insulate ourselves from some of the noise that sits around that. Or we can go off and be distracted by that, and if we do, then we're drawn away from the primacy of our offer. And I think if that's the case, then we lose the right to be chosen by our customers.
No, fair enough. But a big point is consumer confidence. Where are you seeing that at the moment?
The sector we operate in is a mix of necessity and discretionary spend across B2C and B2B. So we've got a pretty broad lens on the community. There's clearly a little bit of a flight to value. We call that out, at our full year results. We can see on the commercial side, there's still a lot in the pipeline. There's contracts that are being committed to. There's still the last stages of government stimulus, home builder, those sorts of programs. That's still to sort of flow through the market. Ultimately for us, people are going to, if it's expensive to be going out to the movies and going and eating out, you're going to eat at home, you're going to do more things at home. But equally, we've all learned a whole lot of new DIY skills the last couple of years, and we've all put more into our homes, in our gardens, in our home offices than we ever have before, and that needs maintenance. So all these things sort of are favourable, but equally, we've got unusual climatic conditions. It's going to be pretty wet over summer. It's not the first year this has happened, and we'd much rather the sun be shining every day and it rain between about 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. every morning. That'd be about perfect for us. That's never going to happen, of course. So you have to work your way through, which again just brings you back to a core value proposition of I've got things that are relevant for my customer at a price point that they want, in a service, giving them a service experience that is rewarding for them, and make the most of that.
The power of marketing. Can you share some insights how that's changed during your career in retail?
It's gone from mass marketing to mass niche. I think eyeballs are going to different places. Eyeballs, live TV, continues to sort of not be as strong as it was. You and I grew up in a world where there were 4 TV channels, right?
That's right.
There's 4 billion of the things now, and generations that go to YouTube and TikTok for their news rather than, the Herald Sun or the Sydney Morning Herald. So eyeballs are changing, and the spend shifts accordingly. And we're moving to what I would call mass niche or mass personalization, where we're finding segments of customers that we can talk to through live sport, whether it's through social media, those sorts of things. It's constantly reinforcing the brand proposition, the value proposition of certain products, and finding the ways to encourage and inspire customers to shop. If all you'd ever done was put a full page ad in the newspaper every week, your audience would be getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And I think that's why all businesses and advertising agencies and the media themselves are continuing to evolve, their offerings so that we can stay connected and relevant to customers. Ads turn up on gaming sites. You can be playing a video game at the moment, and you'll see brands on there. So brands will adapt and evolve as customer needs change and evolve. But marketing and the power of marketing is still really important. But the tailoring to your voice, your taste, your interest, I think that's going to continue to accelerate over time till we get to a point where we have audience groups of one. Now that's not going to happen tomorrow, but I think we get to one or very small sectors, and the way that our data footprints that we leave behind are sort of there to be marked and understood. Marketers are going to be able to tailor those offers pretty succinctly, I imagine.
What do you guys glean from that when you think about the next steps in marketing?
If you're a Flybuys customer,
yep,
we've got a lens on what you shop. We understand that, and we can, over time form a bit of a view. We've thought about the lifetime connection a customer has with us for a long, long time before marketing. There's a Harvard professor, his name's Earl Sassery, wrote a great book called The Service Value Chain.
Okay.
And it talks about the lifetime value of the customer, and we understand that people are engaging with us from before they can shop. When we're painting our kids' faces, giving them a snag, or they're going for a pony ride in our car park, there's an engagement with the brand.
Yep.
At a point in time, you're spending a lot with us as a first home buyer, fitting out your home, doing your garden. There'll be a point in time where all you're doing is buying a packet of screws and maybe nothing. You just came in for the snag on a Saturday morning. What we want is every interaction to be valuable, because what we see is that over 30, 40, 50, 60 years of shopping with us, there's a relationship, and we want that relationship and connection. So at a young age, we've got to be relevant. At the back end of your life, we have people coming in from nursing homes. They carve Hebel bricks, they make macrame pot plant holders, they pot plants. There's no sale there. We're not interested in the sale. We're interested in the connection and the participation in the brand, and the fact that that mum or dad is getting an outing to Bunnings in a nursing home. That's got a positive connection for you with the brand, and it's a good thing for us, a good thing for the community, and a good thing for the team who have that experience with those people in our stores.
Is there any particular retailers you look at and examine very, very closely who do lead in certain aspects regards to the engagement of customer?
Look, we are students of the world, and I think if we brought all home improvement retailers from around the world to Australia, they'd all claim ownership of a bit of a Bunnings Warehouse in terms of a different attribute. And I think
I like
that's
that.
the early Bunnings Warehouse. Is a pretty heavy copy paste of Home Depots, and I think it really resonated with the Australian consumer and community, and the execs that were a part of that, I think, played an important role in bringing that offer into the market. Equally, the transition in 2018, 2019, 2020 to omni-channel retailing, was really important for us to be able to have an offering that was relevant for consumers when they couldn't come into our stores and shop, which happened here in Victoria and over in New Zealand as well. And for people who are older and unwell, not wanting to go out and go in the public, being able to shop online, I think was another really important step. But for me, it's all about just that relevance and that connection, and that's how we sort of think about things.
Last couple of questions. Significant workforce. How do you, as an executive or as a leader, how do you engage? I know you taught your four points. I understand all that, but how do you actually communicate and get the message across? Because culture begins from the top and works its way down. How do you do it?
Yeah, lots of different ways. So I touched on the fact we have an enterprise social media platform, Workplace. We've had that now since 2017, 2018. We've got about 48,000 of our 55,000 team on Workplace. We do live stream, so it'd be something. I'm sitting in one of our 2 studios here in our National Support Centre in Melbourne. We do live streams. We beam live. I get probably a dozen direct messages through the chat function every week from team members, anywhere in Australia, New Zealand. It can be a curiosity question like, am I allowed to wear a certain color boot, or I'm not sure I need to go to get this question answered, to I don't think I've been treated fairly. How do I get some help and support, through to, hey, loved you being in our store last week. Here's a couple of photos. We get on the road. We spend time with our team in stores. We run activities and listening posts with our teams. We have conferences, we have get-togethers, we bring people into our support centres. It is really important to be out there and be active and be present, but also it's driving that behaviour with my leadership team, driving that behaviour with our senior leaders, our area managers, our regional managers. Leadership's a contact sport, right? You can't do it from behind a desk. You can't do it from behind a camera. You've got to be out there talking to your team, which is what made 2021 frustrating. And even then, every time our borders opened, I was out. I went to the Territory, I went to Tasmania, I went to WA, I went to New Zealand. Anywhere you could get out and go and spend time with your team. A great day for me is a day in a red shirt and an apron. A great day for me is in a factory with a supplier in China or US or wherever I can get to. A great day is with a group of our team sitting around a table here in the office having a chat. What's not a great day is staring at spreadsheets and doing the management work. If I can avoid any of that, then and I can listen to team, I'll get 100 times more out of that than I will out of most other things.
And I guess that other part, rolling that into the supplier relationship, is absolutely central as well, isn't it?
Yeah, I'd see 5, 6 suppliers every week. Sometimes it's over a bite to eat or a glass of wine. Sometimes it's in a range review or a presentation at their office or factory. We've seen some incredible things. Been in the US in factories. I've been out in farm paddocks watching big ride-on mowers at work. I've been in paint manufacturing plants. I've been in a kitchen manufacturer and watching some really bespoke packaging that's taking a whole lot of waste out of the supply chain. You're learning all the time, and you're picking those ideas up, bringing them back, sharing them, encouraging other people to do things, and equally peer retailers. We had couple of fantastic days in, what was it, April, May in Toronto with Home Depot Canada. Great time in Europe with a specialist tool business in Vienna.
If you look back at your time at Bunnings, what story or what action or what event moved you the most? And said, gee, that's Bunnings.
There's lots and lots. I think it's whether you're out with a community activity or you're sitting with a team member listening to their. I was at, where was I earlier this year, February this year, Yeppoon in Far North Queensland. I was talking to two team members. We've got an interesting travel policy, interesting employment policy, which we call the grey nomad policy. So yeah, we've got a policy where team members can actually tow their caravan around Australia and work in different Bunnings stores. They go into a pool, they can contact the local store. This couple had worked in, I think they were up to their 13th store.
Right, okay.
They were, working at Yeppoon, doing the store opening. Just listening to that story was incredible. Or someone will reach out, and this story goes back a couple of years, but we had a family in Queensland where a young child was very, very ill, and they needed to come to Melbourne for treatment. They were going to be staying at Ronald McDonald House. I got a note from them when they went back to Queensland to talk about their experience, their store and a store in Melbourne. So no one's senior particularly involved in it. They worked out how they could help that family, the team member who was working in our Queensland store, transfer and work in a Melbourne store, so that they could keep earning money and going to work every day while their partner and child were being cared for at the children's hospital. And all that store rallied around and cooked meals and did things for that family while they were there. And that was quite early in my time. I was in the national operations role. And first question I asked is, how did we organize that? Who made that happen? Who did you talk to? Because I was curious. I wasn't challenging. It was like, oh no, we just made it happen. And to me, that's emblematic of the sort of can do. We're a DIY business, right? So we get things done. Like that's the essence. And we empower our team to do those things. And for every one of those stories, there's hundreds, if not thousands more. So there is no one single moment, but there are moments where you realize you're really, really lucky. We did a conference for our team this year. I think we had 16, 17, 1,800 people down at Rod Laver Arena in on centre court. And, you get to stand up in front of a sea of red shirts and you kind of go, I'm probably the luckiest CEO that's walking around anywhere in Australia at the moment.
What's the role of Wesfarmers?
They're our owner and shareholder. So I'm a member of the Wesfarmers leadership team. We've got a divisional board that our group CEO, Rob Scott, chairs, and our group CFO, Anthony Gianotti, is a member of. They're our allocator of capital. They help us with things like audit. They help us with all the corporate governance. But other than that, they tend to stay out of the way and let us run our business as though we were our own. So we sort of have a little bit of our cake and eat it too, right? We're sort of, this big, diverse, almost a mini conglomerate with our different brands in our own right, but we don't have to deal with the market. We don't have to deal with some of those things. And we're really fortunate, and I'm really fortunate to be surrounded by a group of leadership team executives who are incredibly talented, and really support us to drive value, because they recognise in driving value and bearing in mind Bunnings is a significant part within the Wesfarmers group.
Absolutely.
We're doing the right thing by the Wesfarmers shareholder, and most team at Bunnings are Wesfarmers shareholders, so we feel a strong sense of partnership and ownership in our parent company.
And what's next for Bunnings, Michael?
I think there's lots. I'm excited by some of the over the next 12, 18 months, our customers will see some new categories and ranges. We'll see some new store formats. We'll see the expansion of Beaumont Tiles into Western Australia and the transformation of a number of their stores. We'll see Toolkit Depot hit the east coast of Australia and then head over into New Zealand. We'll see innovations in our Power Pass account program. There's lots in store, and I think that energy and excitement I felt as a 16, 17-year-old pushing trolleys and punching checkouts in a Target store that no longer exists in Chatswood in New South Wales is alive and real in the floors I walk in, Bunnings support centres and Bunnings stores I walk in today. And that's what helps me jump out of bed at a fairly early hour every morning to get in and have a heap of fun.
Yeah, you're up pretty early from what I understand, and you read the newspapers like the Bible first thing in the morning. As a CEO, how do you stay ahead?
Travel is important. I think getting back out into the world, that was a really sharp reminder. So you're always looking for what's global best practice. Yeah, it's easy to say. It's sometimes harder to do, but you got to surround yourself with some pretty outstanding talent. And I look around my leadership group, and I got some pretty outstanding talent. We've got some of the very best leaders and retailers in Australasia, and I think we're very fortunate to have that. And you got to be curious. You should be the dumbest person in the room all the time, not the smartest person, because if you're the dumbest person in the room, you're soaking up information. Eventually you thread that together and you're asking good questions and you're constantly curious. And I think, there's a sprinkling of intolerance, right? I think, you're the coach in chief. You're the one that's got to sort of set the time for the sprints and how many laps everyone's got to run around the oval. You've got to have a little bit of intolerance in there to push, because sometimes I can see a little bit more in some of my team than maybe they can see in themselves or in an opportunity, and you push a bit harder and try and nuance that so that, when they do achieve a bit more than they can, you celebrate that success and then work with them to work out how they're going to go that step further as well.
And if you look back at some of those big calls you've had to make, I think you talked about gut instinct takes a lot more play now as you've got more experience. But if you did look back at one or two, you think, my God, I got that one wrong. How did you get it wrong, and what would you have changed?
I think the things that I've got most wrong are probably in dealings with people. I think at times you sort of assume that by operating in a certain manner, you're going to bring the best out, and you don't. Think that we've got a good operating model and a good capital allocation model. So you contain risk around capital investment, and therefore every now and then there'll be something as simple as going to a store and suggesting to a team to move a few things around and see if it generates more sales, and it's a flop, right? They're little things, but ultimately it's in the things that you do one-on-one with people where you kind of look back and go, I could have been a better version of myself in that moment. And then how do you put that right and actually be a better version for the future, and put things right with the individual as well.
So what's next in store for Michael?
It's an interesting world out there, right? And eventually you've got to get out of the way. Like CEOs, MDs, they're relay runners, right? I've taken a baton from someone, and I will give the baton to someone else. Baton changeover in relay races, as we've seen at Olympics and Commonwealth Games over many, many years, is the high risk part of a relay. The running's the easy part. What CEOs have to learn is how far you got to run. And the beauty of working in a business like Wesfarmers is it's a business that's focused on long term. So I'd love to have a decade, maybe a bit more in this role, but I know I've got to get out of the way at some point in time. So identifying great talent to bring through and succeed me and make the company an even better place is something that, I'll turn my mind to at some point in time. Got incredibly close relationship with my two sons, an amazing family. You want to go and enjoy some of that. You work hard for a long period of time in your life. You want to enjoy it. I'm a believer in, the next right things will turn up rather than necessarily try and go and define or chase them. I'm having some fun, outside of work, support a couple of amazing charities and a couple of sporting clubs. And, I'm learning a lot from those experiences, working with some amazing people. So, I've got a pretty nicely full cup at the moment, and we'll see where what tips in and tips out in the future.
Okay, and if you were to look back at that young man pushing those trolleys all those years ago at Target, what advice would you give him now?
Great question. Probably take chances and back yourself.
You've done that, haven't you?
Yeah. I think that's why I'd probably give him the same advice. And I think equally, don't be afraid to make mistakes, because if, I could spend a week sitting with you talking about all the things that have gone wrong, and you tend to focus on those more because they're the crucible moments to help you make better choices in the future. And you can own those. I think, ultimately things that don't go right are largely on you. They're choices you make, they're behaviors you displayed. Inevitably, things that go really well are truly the combination of teams of people doing amazing things, and I've been attributed with certain things going right or changing in Bunnings, for the better or worse. And, ultimately there's plenty of fingerprints on those cups. So you tend not to not dwell on those, but rather look at the things that maybe weren't quite right and use those as a chance to be a bit better tomorrow.
On that, Michael, thank you very much for joining us today.
My absolute pleasure. Thanks so much for your time, and I hope people that listen to this find it interesting. Thank you.
I'm sure they will. You've been listening to No Limitations.